Good morning. My name is Daniel Gershberg, and welcome to Bowling Alley Law 101. If you're at the CLE, you're interested in opening up a bowling alley, completely kidding. My name is Daniel Gershberg, and this is a course called Chapter 7, the Initial Consultation. We are here today to talk about bankruptcy, specifically consumer bankruptcy, and specifically within the rubric of consumer bankruptcy, how you start your own practice. Bankruptcy is an area of law which I learned about 12 years ago when I first graduated from law school and got my degree. And I decided to go into bankruptcy law for a variety of reasons. One was because I started a solo practice right out of the gate, and I didn't know what in the world I wanted to do. And two, I noticed that with bankruptcy, there's very little overhead. We're going to talk about a ton of stuff today. I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible and straightforward as possible and as light as possible. As you can see, I'm not in a suit. It's casual Thursdays in the office today. It's summertime, and I have a rule that when it goes above 80 degrees, I cannot wear anything long sleeve. Sometimes that costs me clients, but nevertheless, one needs to have comfort. So my approach here is going to be very different from what you typically see in CLEs that you viewed before. Why? Whenever I went to CLEs or I viewed CLEs, the problem was I enjoyed them, and then 5 minutes later when I got to my car, I completely forgot what just happened. I would understand some of the main points, but I wouldn't remember the cases. I wouldn't necessarily remember the substantive law behind it. And I didn't know how to implement it. And as a solo practitioner, I've since become a partner at a larger firm, but as a solo practitioner, that was the most crucial thing for me. How do I leave this course and figure out how to apply these things? How do I leave this course and start being able to bring in clients and speak to them confidently about a subject matter? So we're not going to focus on case law or substantive law surrounding this. We're going to focus on the implementation of consumer bankruptcy law and how you deal with real-world situations that your clients will potentially bring you. The reason, again, is I want to give you and bring as much value as I possibly can in a course like this. And I think pragmatism and applying different approaches and going through the nuts and bolts of it is way better than me telling you about the Bruner test or about any statutory definition surrounding bankruptcy law. I really want you to get a sense of bankruptcy law and how to implement it. So taking a step back, as you know, I'm also a bowling law attorney, but who am I? I graduated law school in 2006. I started my practice right away. I was adventurous, insane, very young, did not have kids or a mortgage. It was a very different time. I felt alive. It's very different now. I love my child, but it's very different now. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. And as I mentioned before, I decided, why not start up my own shop? And I did. And I took every single kind of case under the sun, and I taught myself every practice area that I actually enjoyed. And then bankruptcy came along. And it was another attorney who I knew at the time who had practiced for 15 years that essentially said, do me a favor, go to this meeting of the creditors for me and represent my client. And I went, and I loved it. And I learned, and I would encourage you guys to do the same thing, by literally taking on as many pro bono cases as I possibly could. The Brooklyn Bar Association, at the time, and probably still, had VHS tapes. I'm not going to do the cliche millennial joke about this, but VHS tapes are really, really old. And I went there and I spent time in the conference room and I put in the tapes, and there were two trustees based in Brooklyn that essentially taught the entire course. I taught myself consumer bankruptcy law. And in order to implement what I learned through those cases, I took on pro bono clients. And it was the happiest I've ever felt as an attorney. And I wish the same thing for you if you choose to implement this post this CLE course. Why? You see an immediate change in your client's emotional well-being. You see an immediate change in the way they view the world. You actually see them feel like they lifted this huge chain that was on their chest the entire time. And that was critical for me. It wasn't just about the money or anything else. I wanted to make a difference, as cliche as that sounds, in people's lives. And so what would happen is I would go to the Volunteer Lawyers Project, and I encourage you guys to do the same thing. I don't know if you're watching this in Minneapolis or Los Angeles or wherever it is, but I'm sure in your locality,